Welcome to the Blue Cafe. We offer stories of infidelity, betrayal, and redemption. Please like and subscribe. Cheers. Now, on to today's story. I'm worried about how my ex-wife's actions have affected my son. Need support. My last couple of posts were written with the hopes that they would be able to help others here. Now, I find myself writing this in the hopes that maybe I could get a little help myself. So my ex-wife left back in 2017 to start her new life with a lover in another state. In doing so, she left me and her son behind. I'm certain she would try to spin things as if she didn't really want to just abandon her child just to be with someone else, but the lack of calls over the years inquiring how he's doing, and just how little she's in his everyday life speaks volumes. For the most part, I have to admit that I'm not really all that broken up over this. To be honest, the ex never really seemed to like putting in the work to take care of him anyway. Sure, I give her credit for at least doing the basic feeding, changing, and playing with him when he was little, not to mention going with our plan of reading to him from early on to quickly develop his language and reading skills. My son was already reading before he entered kindergarten. But past toddler age, she could barely be bothered to get up in the morning with him, make him breakfast, get him ready for school, and then either walk him to the bus stop, or drive him to school. That ended up being my job. And I've almost always worked nights. I was also the main person to make dinner as well, and enforce the rules. So you get the idea. Her not being around doesn't really change all that much, and my son is pretty happy being with me. Most of his earlier years he spent sitting on my lap, and even now, at 13 years of age, he still hugs me when I go off to work, and on my days off, I make sure to spend time with him. What I can't help but mull over though, is what's going to happen down the line when he finally confronts his mother. She still wants to spend time with him, albeit in small increments. Basically, the summer, holidays, that sort of thing. My son doesn't mind going, and tends to enjoy himself. But he's not only a very intelligent child, but he's a very observant child as well. And he never forgot what happened back in 2017. It's part of the reason why he and I are so close. During the summer, while my ex ran off to be with her new lover, I was busy trying to lock down a new home in a new state, and so my son was spending time with my parents. I was staying at a friend's place while trying to look for our own, and was having some difficulty locking one down. August was going to be over in a couple of weeks, which meant school was going to start soon, and I was worried that I wouldn't find a place in time. Meanwhile, I was calling him almost every day, letting him know what was going on, and asking how he was doing. In the middle of August, I had called him in the evening, and was reassuring him that even though I hadn't found us a place yet, I was still trying very hard every day, and that I wasn't planning to just leave him with my parents while I went off to do my own thing. I wanted to reassure him that I wasn't abandoning him. My son then cuts me off and says something that to this day still stings my heart. "Don't worry, Dad, don't worry. I know you aren't abandoning me. I think my mom has, but I know you haven't." He said that to me when he wasn't yet 10 years old. While I was calling him almost every day, she barely did. In fact, the times they were in contact, he was the one reaching out to her most times. My son is the type who keeps a lot to himself, and he's never really elaborated on things, but I know that this bothered him. When I finally did find us a place, just in the nick of time, and I went back to get him, he tackle-hugged me at the door. It's pretty much been me and him since. I do have a girlfriend currently, and thankfully she not only helps take good care of him, but he likes her a lot as well. So much so that he calls her mom. I'm sure you guys are beginning to see my pensiveness for the future. He still keeps in touch with his birth mother, and yes, he still calls her mom too, though mostly he's the one reaching out. It's certainly not every day. Most like every month or so. She so far has called him maybe 3 times this year. This is not the sort of thing that's going to go unnoticed by him. What's more, He's now getting into his teenage years, and you know what tends to happen with teens and their parents as they get older. Add to that all the stuff that my son is keeping inside, and it's obvious that, sooner or later, there's going to be a blow-up between him and my ex. And I'm sure I'm going to get blamed for it. For my part, I've done my best not to talk negatively about her to him, or in his presence. And I have not stood in the way of their communication, or him visiting her. Hell, I'm usually the one paying for his trip. But I know there is going to be fallout between them. And while I can't say I'm looking forward to it, exactly, I also can't say that she hasn't reaped the fury he's going to unleash. I feel for my son. I'm wondering if there is anything I could be doing for him in the meantime. I've already been looking into counseling for him, and so far haven't found the right fit. But I feel I could be doing more. He's my only son. I don't want to fail him. To say the types of problems that cheating brings about sucks, is an understatement. Edit, to clear up some things. I'm not worried so much about my son blowing up on my ex, as I am more worried about him feeling abandoned by his mother. Granted, it's not as if I can change what happened, and it's not like I forced her to cheat and then leave. But it's not exactly a great feeling to think your own mother doesn't really want you around. It's a bit more complicated than that, but basically, she chooses not to be a big part of his life anymore, and that's a rough thing for a kid to go through. I'm hoping that when he gets older, he will be able to move on from that, and that with enough support from me, my girlfriend, and from counseling, it will be easier for him to do so. I just wish he didn't have to go through this. Is your son seeing a counselor? He should. That's the plan. I had found therapists before, but they weren't good fits. I'm still looking, though. I want him to have all the tools and outlets he needs. You're doing a good work. Keep your eye on the 3 most important goals right now: him, and him. Be there for your kid. Knowing you've got his back is crucial for his development. He needs to know he's safe. Let him unleash. I'd say it would be cathartic for him to do so while knowing that he still has you. It may happen where ties are completely cut, but maybe that's not a bad thing. You're already doing the best by him you can. Get him a counselor and make sure he doesn't self-isolate. Find out his hobbies and put him in a club for it. Don't pick one for him if he likes drawing, get him in an art club, or hell, start one. Encourage healthy socialization. As far as your ex-wife, she legit should have been cut out when he said she abandoned him. At this point she's just a reminder he wasn't a good enough reason for her, and I think it just reopens wounds that have already never properly healed. You worry too much. You cannot fix his mother's neglect, but you have worked hard to show him your love and that he can rely upon you. Good work. You got this. I have a friend who had exactly the same thing with his ex. His son eventually quit contacting his bio mom. Counseling will help with the anger and abandonment. You may not see it, but the anger is there. Oh, I know it's there. He's my son, so I recognize certain behavior patterns. I'm hoping to finally find the right therapist to help him with that. Man, your story is close to mine. Keep being there for him and showing him love like you have been. I'm a single dad to a 13-year-old daughter myself, and her mom ran off over drugs. I just did everything like you're doing. Being there, showing love and support. Keep your mind open. Let him know that if he needs a vent, that he can let it all out without worries of saying something bad, curse words. I feel giving my daughter the freedom to express herself over her mother helps her clear her head a lot, also therapy, and she is in a way better space. Feel free to PM me anytime if you have any questions. Thank you. While it's unfortunate that so many people have suffered similar issues, at least it's comforting to know that there are others who know what it's like, and can relate. I'll probably take you up on that offer. Thanks. Climbing Mount Everest. Reflections. Reconciliation is no easy task. I'm sure most of you on this sub know this better than I do. I did attempt this with my past marriage, briefly, but it soon became clear that my now ex wasn't interested, and so I gave up and moved on with my life. But there are others here who have been doing this for a lot longer, dealing with the ups and downs. They know of the daunting task they are undertaking, with all its emotional and mental trials, the anguish and pain that they have to go through. I can't help but admire the amount of strength and focus it takes to attempt this. When it comes to reconciliation, I tend to look at it the same way I look at something as monumental as trying to climb Mount Everest. It's something that few people are able or willing to attempt, and even fewer are able to accomplish. It's something that is next to impossible to do on one's own. The couple needs to be a team, with both committed to the same goal, and willing to do their part to get there. There will be major obstacles in the way, and to be honest, odds are, it may not happen. Many others have tried, and failed, usually because only one was really trying to reach that end goal, or there were outside factors that they just couldn't overcome, or they were getting in their own way. It usually is a combination of these detriments. But it's not impossible. People have been able to achieve monumental feats before. Sure, it's daunting. Sure, few people seem to be able to do it. But when they do, what an accomplishment. There are ways that reconciliation is an even greater feat. For one thing, those trying to climb that famous mountain have a greater number of people on their team. Meanwhile, some couples may find that they might be on their own. Maybe friends and family don't approve. Maybe they are having trouble finding the right therapist. So for a while, they might be on their own. Hopefully though, they'll be able to find those who are willing to join the team, so to speak, and actually be able to help them to make it in the end. Still, having to deal with others who don't appreciate their attempt at reconciliation, and worse, may even be trying to sabotage it, is a difficult thing to encounter. Another thing to consider is that, unlike climbing Everest, reconciliation doesn't really end. Sure, there will be a point where the relationship is more or less mended, or rather a new, functioning relationship has developed and flourished, and the couple can continue their lives together as a working, loving team. But there will always be little reminders of the damage from before, old pains, further challenges, that may threaten what they have achieved. It's going to take ongoing work to keep these things from cracking the foundation of their relationship. But then again, it takes active work to maintain a relationship in the first place. The one thing that I think marks a successful reconciliation when infidelity happens is that despite the betrayal, despite the pain and shame felt, and the emotional turmoil that is experienced, the love that the couple share for each other was able to endure it. That's not an insignificant detail. It's one thing to talk about a love that's endured for years without the damage of betrayal. But it's another thing to talk about a love that endured despite it. There's a beauty in that, especially since it's one that's rare. I have my reasons for sharing this sentiment of mine. Despite being someone who feels that those who do harm should get what they deserve, I also would rather see people reconciled than be embittered towards one another. I prefer seeing people making amends and taking each other back into loving embraces. I feel the world needs more of that, and I love to see it whenever it happens. There are some posts on here that make me smile, because it shows that there are people that are able to make this monumental feat happen. And so, while I do believe in helping people get out of a bad situation, which, unfortunately, seems to be the type of advice I feel compelled to give more often, I also believe in offering any sort of advice and support I can to bring about a more loving outcome, and cheering on those that achieve it. So, for those who are working towards achieving reconciliation, I say, if there's a chance for it, go for it. It may be a difficult goal to reach, but that doesn't mean it isn't worth reaching. If you reach it, what an achievement. And if you don't, well, at least you can say you made the attempt. After all, we aren't going to say that those who at least have tried to climb the mountain don't deserve at least some merit for the attempt, are we? This is so beautifully written, and such an eloquent description of our reconciliation journey. Thank you for writing and sharing this piece, it really moved me. Wow, Wow. This is amazing. Excellent. It's also just exactly what I needed to hear at this time. My D-Day was almost exactly a year ago. At that time I told my wayward spouse that I wanted to take a year to decide whether or not I felt willing/able to stay together. I've spent the subsequent year trying to evaluate things, trying to decide whether or not to attempt the work, together with my spouse, of reconciliation. I've spent the time gathering information about what went on during the affair, about my marriage before and during the affair, about my spouse and who he actually is, about myself, even about the affair partners. He's been doing lots of work on himself. I have done a lot to become stronger and more independent so that, whether we stay together or not, I'll be okay. I've also done a lot of venting during this year. I've expressed a huge amount of anger, pain, hurt and sorrow. I've mostly decided to try and work on reconciling. I know that's what my spouse wants me to decide. This decision feels risky, like a giant leap of faith. In order to be able to reconcile effectively, I will have to let go of most of the anger, hurt, pain and mistrust. I'll have to have hope. I'll have to move past the past, and focus on the future. And golly, it feels like some of that will involve work. Also risk. But also joy, potentially. Your Mount Everest analogy really resonates with me. I remember reading Into Thin Air, by Jon Krakauer, years ago, and the impact that tale had. You're so right about the teamwork, the commitment, the risk and the hard work. But for those few who do succeed, the joy can be immense. I think that's why people continue to make the attempt to climb Everest, despite the danger, risk, expense, and everything else. It's the unparalleled joy if you happen to succeed. And they all have hope of feeling that joy and sense of triumphant accomplishment if they do succeed. To them, it's worthwhile. The hope is what keeps them going. But it's certainly not an easy journey, and many don't make it. Also, it's important to note that in a successful attempt, all participants need to be all in. Thank you again for your wise insights. I am sorry your own reconciliation didn't work out successfully. Wishing you happiness in the future. I also wish good luck to all who are attempting the brave journey towards reconciliation. May you find favorable winds blowing in your direction. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. If only we all could have friends like you. Support. Of course, as I am not reconciling, tried, but it didn't work, take what I say with a grain of salt. Even so, this is posted in the hopes that it's useful. It's been said lately that there is a lot of negativity going on in this sub. I don't think it's fair to deny what people are feeling here. I also think that one could easily find posts that point blank state that reconciling with a WS might not be a good idea. Such sentiment does, of course, go against the goals and intentions of this sub, and would be disheartening to those who are trying their best to make things work, and are hoping to find help and support for their efforts here. I get that. But I also wonder if people bemoaning the negativity are looking for something other than support. Let's not kid ourselves, successful reconciliation after infidelity is rare. I at one time stated that it was like climbing Mount Everest. It takes a whole lot of planning, hard work, effort, and pain to succeed at it, and everyone involved has to be completely committed to it. Those who don't take any of that into account, or do any of it, won't make it. Even if they do, the way forward will still be hard. Plus, unlike climbing that famous mountain, there's not really an end goal. More like a standard of life that one will not only have to reach, but also consistently maintain. The work will not end. If I was to undergo such a hazardous undertaking, I personally would want practical, realistic advice on what to do, what to avoid, and what to look out for. I would want people to be honest about what is going on, and what to expect. I wouldn't want people to just tell me what I want to hear, or to tell me everything is fine when it isn't. When doing something like this, I want to succeed. I don't just want to be placated. I think some people may feel let down when they don't see a lot of cheerful, hopeful comments on how well their attempts are going. It can feel hopeful when you see post after post saying how rough a particular day is going, or how their WS doesn't seem to be getting it, or how BS isn't opening up, or, worse, that someone is giving up, usually for a pretty good reason. Also, people coming in just to say their efforts are in vain and that they should have just dumped the cheater anyway certainly doesn't help. Here's the thing though. To an extent, I feel that some of this stuff should be expected, because of the slim chances of success. Have any of you watched the Ninja Warrior competitions? The obstacle courses that the contestants have to go through are insane. Very few people make it to the end of those. A great deal of people end up at the bottom of those obstacle courses. It should be apparent from watching the show and seeing what goes on, that it takes a great deal of procreation, work, and commitment to beat that challenge. Not everyone is up to that level of commitment. And even if one is, things can go wrong. It's expected that a lot of people are going to fall. And there are a whole lot of people out there who don't even want to try, either because they know how hard the work is going to be, or because they just don't believe it's possible to make it to the end. All that should be obvious. Well, it's the same here. The people who make it to the end of that ninja challenge aren't preparing themselves with those who just tell them what they want to hear. They have a rather tough set of win conditions they need to meet, and they can't waste time with any sort of support or advice that won't help them achieve that. They don't want to be around the guy who's just going to say, don't worry about that, it's nothing, when they aren't jumping as high as they need to, their balance is a little off, or if their speed is dropping a bit. They want to be around the people who will say, hey, you need to work on that. That's how they win. As far as the naysayers, they're not focused on them. Again, they are trying to win. Maybe bringing up the Ninja Warrior Challenge isn't a good example, since in the end, it's only one person running through the course. Okay. So we're back to the mountain again. That's definitely more of a team effort. What I mentioned above still applies, but now I can bring up one more factor. Are you working with a committed and hard-working teammate? I certainly would want to know if the person I'm trying to work with isn't fully on board. If we don't have the same level of commitment, if we don't have the same goal, if we aren't doing this for each other's sakes as well as our own, I'd want to know. And I'd certainly appreciate it when others who could see it when I can't make the attempt to let me know. Letting me know that my teammate, my partner, isn't doing what it takes to help both of us isn't negativity. It's support. If you are in this sub, trying to reconcile after infidelity, you're trying to win with your own set of tough win conditions. You need to have a realistic perspective of your situation and your goals, and you need to have practical, grounded tools and support to achieve it. You can't fix a problem if you can't see it for what it is, and you need to make sure you have what you need in order to make this fix possible. You also need to see how other people messed up so that, hopefully, you can avoid those same pitfalls. It's one thing to not want to have to deal with comments from naysayers. I definitely get that, and considering the rules of this sub, you shouldn't have to deal with that. But if one is feeling bad because of posts where people talk about how their partner isn't putting in the work, or that they're going through a rough patch, or they are pretty much throwing in the towel, well, honestly, that's the sort of thing that should be expected from time to time. It's a rough trip to the end, remember? People are going to falter a bit. What's more, people are going to fall off the mountain, especially if they aren't working with good teammates. Expect it. Take it into account. And then continue your journey. Focus on beating the odds. Accept that not everyone is going to make it there, but do your damnedest to make sure you do. P.S. Also, just because the odds are not favorable, doesn't mean we can't figure out ways to make them better. I can think of lots of things that in the past weren't achievable by most people, but these days we consider them highly possible.